Hello, everyone. Welcome to CWD Virtual. I'm going to wait a few minutes and allow everyone to pop on as they're getting off their work screens and hopefully onto their fun screens, which is what tonight is going to be all about. I suggest everyone take a moment to grab a drink, a glass of wine or a glass of water, and we will kick off in just a few minutes. So if you've just joined, like I said, we're just waiting a few more minutes to allow people to jump on after they're logging off work, hopefully, and jumping on here. And I will wait another minute or two. If you haven't yet, grab a glass of wine, grab a glass of water. Hopefully people aren't still drinking coffee. If you don't have a long night ahead of you, but do grab a drink, and we will kick off here in just a moment with our Breaking Barriers, the Voices of Women in Tech. All right. Well, I don't want to take any more time away from our panelists. We're going to have a great conversation this evening, and I'm going to get us started. So first, I want to make a land acknowledgement that we are here on Native land. If you are based in Seattle, as I am, we're on Duwamish and the Washington Water Salish tribes. And I would just like to extend our thank you on behalf of myself and behalf of all of us joining tonight, and acknowledge that we are working and living on their lands. If you haven't ever checked out native-land.ca, it will tell you which tribes are from the land where you're based. And so that's a really great and lovely and interesting resource to use if you haven't yet done that. I want to, before we get into the details tonight and into our panel, I really want to suggest that you save the date for our upcoming events. On May 11th, we are partnering on an event with Be Bold, which is a wonderful organization here in Seattle who host the International Women's Day celebration each year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, of course, we weren't able to host the event in person in March. Happy International, Women's International Women's Day and International Women's Month. So we moved the event to May in the hopes that we would then be able to meet in person. And so on May 11th at Seattle Town Hall, starting at 5:30, we'll have Be Bold, and we are partnering with them on that. So we hope to see there. Don't buy tickets just yet, because in April, we'll send an email with a discount code for tickets for our membership. So if you haven't yet signed up for our newsletter, do that. And that way you'll get the emails in April with the discount code to attend Be Bold. And then I'm really thrilled to announce CWD's next event, which is on Thursday, May 19th, again at 5:30. And it's all about women in the arts and the democratization of access to the arts and the role of women and female leaders in the arts, both across performing arts to physical arts. And that will be an in-person event at the Opera House here in Seattle. Their beautiful space will host us for a talk. We'll be able to have a tour of the Opera House and, of course, a lovely reception. So please hold both of those dates. There won't be an April CWD event as we'll have both of these events in May, and we want to make sure people can attend both. And without further ado, I really want to bring Morgan on here. Morgan is one of our board members and the orchestrator of tonight's event. And she's going to introduce to us the panelists who we have joining the conversation tonight, and she will be leading the discussion. If you have questions, comments, would like to add something, please use the chat function to continue the conversation. And you can also use the Q&A button, which is in the middle of your Zoom menu, to submit any questions that you'd like us to ask the panelists towards the end of their conversation. So Morgan, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Frances. I'm so excited to be here with everybody tonight, and we've got an incredible panel lined up for everyone. I'm going to start by introducing our 4 panelists for tonight. They are Katie Jenkins, who is the Skills Edge Product Director at Mercer. Katie, do you want to come on and say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Awesome. So next we'll introduce Christine Perez, who is the Content Marketing Manager at Iconic.
Hey, everybody. So good to be here.
Next, we have Lynn Turworth, who is the board president at the Northwest Maritime Center.
Hello, happy to be here. Thank you.
And then last but certainly not least is Vanessa Pagueros, who is the board member and who is a board member, angel investor, and venture partner. Thanks for joining us today, Vanessa.
Thanks, Morgan. Great to be here and look forward to a really interesting conversations.
Definitely. I know we were going to have a wonderful conversation and we're going to get right into it with a couple of questions. So with this discussion today, I'm going to ask a question to everyone and we'll just go round robin. Looks like in my order, it's Katie, Lynn, Christine, Vanessa. So maybe we can just go in that order or we'll like back up. Maybe we'll switch it around. So we'll start with Katie. So you're first up. I know it's going to make you crazy, but here we go. So the first question tonight for tonight's discussion, research shows that diverse teams perform better and are more innovative. But however, diversity is not often reflected in the technology industry specifically. In fact, large global technology firms reach about 33% overall female representation. That means 70% still male. And while there is more leadership in the female workforce, it's only up 2% since 2019. So I want to know tonight from all of our panelists, what led you all to the tech space and what barriers have you encountered? Tonight, Katie, we'll start with you.
Great, thanks, Morgan. And it's interesting we're starting with me because I think I have a somewhat interesting career path because I was one of the lucky few who started my career at a leading global HR consulting firm in the world. And so when you think consulting, you don't necessarily think tech. But I started at Mercer when I was 20 as a college intern, and I ended up staying for 13 years in a number of different areas of Mercer's product business. So Mercer is mainly known for their consulting work, but they also have a product arm of the business. And in those 13 years, I really did a lot of the jobs that are now recognized as traditional customer success roles. I was an implementer of software. I was a solutions engineer. I was a customer success manager, although I wasn't really like called any of those titles, but that's definitely the role I played. And as my career at Mercer advanced, I felt really safe and secure. They were very supportive of my career and all the things I wanted to do. But a little bit cheekily, I also felt like the twins that Elsa and Frozen and Moana felt, where something was out there, right? Something was out there waiting for me, and it was up to me to discover it. And in 2017, I really took that leap of faith and left Mercer, my comfort zone, for a Seattle-based tech company. And I was really lucky to stay at that company for 3 years through a lot of different changes of that company, including scaling the business, integrating a previously acquired company, and an exit, and a complete leadership turnover. And I think that's really a fun place to be in the tech world, and really great experiences that you might look forward to seeing in the tech world, because there's always so much change. So I'll stop there, but as I answer other questions, I'm definitely going to reflect back on my time in the small tech world, and also relate it to how it shows up in my time at Mercer as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Lynn?
Thanks, Morgan. So I have a very non-traditional path into technology. I was supposed to write a dissertation. I passed my comps for a degree in classical philology, which is ancient Latin, Greek, and a minor in archaeology. And our department got a grant for computers, which I'm almost embarrassed to talk about it, because this is the mid 80s. And that was the beginning of the end. I discovered my passion. I just love technology. It was very difficult for me to break into the field. But the two things that really helped me was I invested in myself. So being at a university and an adjunct professor, I had access to all kinds of tech. So I started out at a Unix prompt, but I also had access to a lot of software at a very, very inexpensive price. And I invested in myself. And then when I made the transition away from the university and tried to begin a career in technology, I got a mentor, and I invested a lot of time in someone who would be very honest with me of how difficult it would be for me to transition from such a deep humanities background, because I couldn't establish credibility and I didn't have any business experience whatsoever. And I really needed both. Just to make a long story short, I worked for some systems integrators. I got my tech chops. And then in 1999, I moved out here to Seattle to work for Microsoft. I had a 10-year career there, and I'd already gotten into cybersecurity as a specialty and spent time there, went to Barclays Bank in London, and came back to work for Oracle's global healthcare business unit. And, today I'm really, I'm focused very differently because I'm semi-retired. So a lot of barriers, but also a theme of just, really taking a look at what do I need, where am I honestly, and what is it going to take for me to get to where I have the competence or the experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Christine?
So Lynn and I think, have similar trajectories in that we didn't start in tech. I actually started with a playwriting degree from UCLA. So as you would imagine, there were lots of opportunities for a playwright to make it in the world. So from playwriting, I went into getting a job in retail at the Apple store, which was actually very eye-opening, because I really got to immerse myself in technology. Even though I was on the retail side of Apple, I was able to really communicate and work with customers who were having either trouble with their technology or who wanted to learn more about their tech. So I really got to immerse myself a lot in that space. So I was there for about 5 years, teaching customers and helping them with their hardware and software. And then from there, I tried to kind of branch out away from tech, and got my degree in publishing from New York University. So I kind of went in that direction, and tech just kept pulling me back in. So I was in higher ed for a while, working at NYU School of Law and Stanford School of Law in their communications department. So I was really kind of honing in my marketing skills, I think, at that point, in my writing. And luckily, I was able to kind of parlay that into a role here in Seattle. And since I've moved to Seattle, I've been working in tech. So I think, to Lynn's point, I think it was really advantageous for me to kind of learn things on my own outside of work, really take advantage of any opportunities I had to network, to go to these kind of product marketing for tech events, even engineering events. I was not an engineer, but I liked to hang out with engineers and really kind of pick their brains on tech. So I like putting myself in a place where I was not comfortable and just kind of pushing my boundaries of what I knew and what I didn't know. So that really helped me, I think, continue my trajectory. And so now I'm in product marketing and content marketing at Ionic. And I feel like I've really been able to connect the dots, going backwards, as Steve Jobs has said in the past, just connecting the dots to get to where I am now. I think it feels like a meandering path, but when you look back, it all kind of makes sense. So for anybody interested in going into tech who feels like they are so far removed from the industry, I was there, I've been there. You can definitely take the skills that you have and transition into the tech industry.
Thanks so much, Christine. Vanessa, you want to tell us what led you to tech?
Yeah, my story is going to seem a little boring compared to those last couple of stories. So my story is a little more straightforward. I have always loved math and science since elementary school. So I stayed on that path of what I loved and eventually graduated with an engineering degree. And from there, launched my career into tech. And I've been in tech 30 plus years. The last 19 of those years, specifically in cybersecurity. I have worked, and this kind of speaks to some of the barriers I encountered in this career, my tech career, which is I work for, I think I've lost count, but I think 16 different companies in my career. And people, ask me why have you worked for so many different companies? And I think part of it was I would feel, I don't know what you call it nowadays, the glass ceiling or lack of sponsorship or lack of people taking interest, whether my boss or just the general structure, taking interest in my development in my career. I quickly moved on to a different company if I felt like that wasn't occurring. I did stay a little longer at several companies because I had like a sponsor, and I know we're going to talk about that a little later, but I think there are so many different barriers. And early in my career, there would be these high potential programs. And inevitably, white males were picked to be part of that program. Rarely did you see a person of color or a woman in those programs. So I just knew that at that point in my career, I really didn't have a great future, and I didn't want to waste a lot of time with organizations that didn't see that value in me and didn't show the effort to develop it. So my strategy didn't turn out too bad. I've had a very good career in tech. And I think now what I do is I sit on boards and corporate boards, and I also help startups, mostly tech startups, help them become more successful. And I'm also investing in like angel investment for diverse founders, women, and represented people are my target on my angel investment. So it all ended in a good place, but definitely had a ton of changes in terms of companies I work for.
Thanks so much, Vanessa. And that leads really nicely into another question I'd like to ask tonight, or another fact to lead us into a question. A recent Women in Workplace report from McKinsey said that women's representation in leadership roles has increased since 2016. However, women, especially women of color, remain significantly underrepresented. Women continue to face a broken rung at the first step up to manager. For every 100 men that get promoted to manager, only 86 women get promoted to the same place. So, ladies, how do you support the promotion and representation of women and minorities in your spaces and in organizations at companies that you've been at? Let's switch things around now. Christine, do you want to go first?
Sorry, mute. Yes, sure. So just thinking back in my career and at my current company, I feel like I used both a bullhorn and kind of a microphone. So I could use that as an analogy, I suppose. So the bullhorn was anytime I feel like somebody needs to be recognized, I will make sure that they're recognized. Luckily, in the current company that I work in, we have what we call like kudos. It seems kind of cheesy, but it actually really helps to kind of have that direct promotion and that direct feedback for our team. So any activity, big or small, you can give your teammates kudos, and they'll it'll be recognized across the company. So I really think that that kind of transparent kind of bullhorn of promotion is really important, especially for women and underrepresented communities, because that's just lacking across the tech industry. As much as we'd like to think otherwise, as much as the optics tell us that more women are getting into tech than ever, the tides are turning. It really is, I think, a very kind of, to be honest, like a superficial kind of marker. Potentially, yes, more women are coming into the industry, but once you're in, you might not be getting the roles that you want. You might not be getting the recognition you deserve. So I think the bullhorn is really important to, it's important to give that recognition every time, anytime that somebody does something great. And then I also like to pass the mic. I'm one person and I don't represent all women. I don't represent, underrepresented communities. I like to acknowledge that, and I like to hear from those communities as much as possible. So, as much as I'd like to promote, I also like to then ensure that their voice is being heard at the same time. So those two effects, I think, as in my small little world of tech and in my own way, I'm hoping I could make a difference in that way.
Thank you. I love that passing the microphone. I think that's so important. And Vanessa, I'm really interested to hear how you're like passing a microphone from a VC perspective.
Yeah, I did mention, one of the biggest challenges for female founders, diverse founders, is the being able to raise capital in order. They're still not getting much of the capital coming to them. White males still control. It's a pretty crazy statistic, but it's somewhere in the range of 80-90% of capital goes to white male founders. And so that is one way I feel like we really need to support these founders. I do like in angel investing to like lending money to your family. If all of us know there's like no guarantee you're getting that money back, it's a very high risk type of thing, but you do it because you want to give these individuals a chance to be successful. And the more of them that are successful, or I'm hoping they will pay that forward and they will like also help when they are more successful. And so I feel it's a community approach, and we just have to keep working together, supporting each other to make this happen. And I do think that men definitely have a role to play with this, and that they, have the opportunity to really be supportive of women in the environment. Because yes, women are coming into the tech environment, but at lower levels, and they're having incredibly hard times moving up in those environments. And the culture of many tech companies is not very conducive to women in general. And so that makes it even harder. So I think men have a role to start to change these cultures, to start to make women feel more included and not have to have women conform to what they're comfortable with and what they want to see in the culture. So it's kind of take, a whole host of people to make these changes.
You're absolutely right. And I can see, Katie, you're like ready to jump in. So let's hear it.
Oh, you read my mind. Yeah, I was hoping you'd call me next. Because I think that the way that I would answer this question is you gave me a really good lead in, Vanessa. And one of the things that I think about and how I can support women and minorities is showing up myself the way that I hope others are safe to show up at work. And what I mean by that is that I show up very vulnerable and real to work. The people that work with me will see my kids running around in the background at times. I will be very open if I've had like a rough night the night before. I also make a really concerted effort to find a couple meetings, especially in this hybrid workspace where I'm walking outside, and I don't apologize for it. And I think that when a leader sets the stage that being human at work is okay, and that you don't have to present a certain front that's not relevant to your life, that others will begin to work from a place of safety and trust. And, you know, that's shown up for me a few different ways in my career. I've had people on my team who are new mothers coming back from maternity leave, and they're in a major fog, and allowing space for them to really understand how work now fits into their life is important. Another one is a colleague who is caring for an elderly parent. They clearly have other priorities, and the more that I can support them in their personal lives and in their human world, the better that they feel, and the safer they feel to show up to work. So it might seem a little counterintuitive, but I think when we create that safe space for employees, they actually perform a lot better and drive better business results because they are working from a place of trust.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Katie. Lynn, let's hear it from you. You know, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you know, we've heard about really amplifying women and voices, the power of the purse with Vanessa, Katie, and, you know, the being authentic and real, and also realistic about where we are in our life. You know, from my perspective, I think that no matter what level you are or what place you are in your career, to me, supporting women in the workplace is really a strategic discussion, because it may be that you're part of a hiring team earlier on in your career. Later on as a manager, you'll make decisions about pay increase or merit or promotions and so on. You'll have a power to promote at a lot of different levels. And I think also strategically, we have to think about, where am I in the organization? You know, when can I have a conversation with a male colleague that says, you know, there are no women or minorities on your team, or very few, or, you know, I noticed that in our organization as a whole, especially in cybersecurity, women drop out mid-career. So that's even more frightening. And sometimes the best route to that is through a discussion of the economics and the business. So, you know, for our company, you know, we are at an economic and strategic disadvantage. And if we've invested in our people, if anyone leaves mid-career, the cost to recruit, to train, you know, to nurture, to bring along, regardless of, you know, racial or gender backgrounds, it's a big investment. So it's really bad for business for us to not have that retention. Sometimes that's the better way, and maybe sometimes the less threatening. So I would say that it's about a series of strategic discussions that, you know, you're picking your moment and your time to figure out how you can have influence.
I love that quote about influence, especially as we think about what it takes to close the pay gap. According to the World Economic Forum, at today's pace, it's going to take 267 years for women to reach parity in both economic participation and opportunity. So, ladies, what fair policies can companies put into place to retain and support more women? Let's see. Vanessa, can we start with you?
Sure. You know, if you think about any situation, where do you feel most comfortable? You feel most comfortable in environments where there are others that look like you, or there are others who share similar experiences as you. So like what organizations need to do is they need to be very intentional about making it a very diverse environment where many different types of people feel included. And so that just doesn't happen, because left to kind of, I think, human beings' natural tendencies, they're going to hire people who are in their network. And often people don't have a super diverse network. I think that's changing, but it's still not a reality, especially when it comes to business. Like if you think about your business relationships, men tend to be more networked with other men in business. And so when it comes time for, to hire a new person, they go immediately to their network, and guess what? There aren't a lot of women there. So it's a pipeline problem. No, it's not actually a pipeline problem. It's your network problem. You don't have a diverse network. And so what I think that companies need to, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily agree with this, but I do think companies need to look at the diversity in their organization, and they need to be intentional about saying, look, we have this organization that is 80% white males. Like, we need something different in that organization. It's not about qualifications. It's about you just didn't have the network of people. When I worked at my last job, 3 of my 4 direct reports were women. Now, why is that? It wasn't like, oh, well, you just had a very different, you were lucky you got to hire women. No, I have a diverse network, and I can call on those individuals. And diversity comes in many ways too. I'm not just talking gender. I had one person who was trans in my team. I had a person who was neurally diverse. And that you have to look at all elements of diversity so people feel welcome. And once they start to feel welcome, they start telling their friends, hey, you should come work for this company or this group. This is a really good group. And then you get that's the catalyst, and people want to come be a part of that kind of culture and environment.
Environment is critical. And I think, Katie, you've got some thoughts on environment.
Yeah, I mean, I work at Mercer, so I talk about this kind of thing every day, like how organizations can implement pay practices that are objective, not subjective, get away from subjective like increases and hiring practices. And I've seen successful organizations adopt programs that lean on other attributes of an employee outside of their name and their job performance. So some organizations are actually at rewards time, when they're planning for year-end increases and bonuses, they're not even surfacing an employee's name to managers. They're giving them an objective look at the skills that the employee has compared to what the job needs, and any other types of attributes that are minimizing to any bias that would take place. And I think another important factor that has driven me in my career is to own my own destiny in pay conversations, and not really rely on programs that an organization needs to put in place. I've worked at organizations that have really great programs, and I've worked at organizations that clearly don't have any program at all. And one of the pieces of advice I would give anybody listening is that you're in charge of your own destiny. And if you feel like you are not getting paid fairly because of a certain bias, whether it's gender or minority status, then really take the time to tie your contributions to the business down to how you're driving revenue, whether that's on top line growth or reducing costs for the business. And it's really difficult if you can make that direct tie, or even if you can make a tie at all to your contributions. It's really tough for leaders to argue with data. And anytime that anybody comes to me and asks for advice on how they can negotiate their pay, whether they think it's unfair or not, that's always my advice, is to tie your contributions, your direct dollar-driven contributions to the business, and bring that to light for your leader.
Lynn, what do you have to add?
Well, I've been in I've worked for two companies that are in highly regulated industries, one in banking and the other for healthcare. And one of the things that I like to do is to draw parallels. How does our team reflect our customers? If we're a global company, in both cases, very, very global companies, why are we not a global team? And I think the other piece of it too is there's so many regulations and standards and policies and practices that we follow. And most organizations, especially in regulated industries, there's part of the rhythm of the business is an annual review of that. But you can really question why diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't also reviewed on an annual basis in terms of policies, standards, and practices. And I don't know, for me, it's been easiest that I think what Katie is saying is that if you speak the business language, there is a common foundation that you have a jumping off point. And I think it's easier to find allies that way because it's, I'll be honest, I think there's a lot of things in the business world that scare people around these conversations. So I have been more successful when I haven't been the scary voice in the room, but it feels like it's a continuation of a business discussion.
Thanks so much. Christine, how about you?
All of these are amazing. I actually found myself, I was trying to write my own notes to talking points. I ended up just writing everyone else's notes as if I'm attending this panel, which I feel like I am. I'm learning so much already. But what I've noticed in past companies that I've worked in are two things. One, I think it's highly encouraging to know that the company is looking out for your best growth potential interest when they give education stipends, or they have subscriptions to classes that you can take, or kind of those kinds of resources, I think help broaden your own skill set, like Katie was saying, kind of ensuring that you're continuing to grow yourself within the company, but then also it really encourages continued growth and education, and especially if the classes are around diversity and inclusion and equity and around best business practices, because then that really allows that conversation to kind of flourish and to be open. Another thing that I noticed is that finding those allies within the company to kind of start those conversations. I'm recently married for a couple of years, and we're looking to start a family someday, and that's a terrifying thought to have, and in the industries that we're in tech, and just knowing who to talk to about those kinds of things, and knowing that once you start those conversations within those ally groups, to then be able to expand it to the broader company, I think would help kind of spur that inclusion, or kind of having those kind of really difficult conversations, like Lynn was saying, in a network that you feel comfortable if it's not the entire company, at least within like a niche network, and then expanding that out, I think would be beneficial.
I think that's so interesting. And we've talked a lot here tonight about the impact that external organizations have on women, how they're being paid, and different pay disparities. But how have you seen competition between women negatively impact retention? Katie, let's start with you.
Yeah, great question. I think, I don't know if I can directly answer this question, but so sorry in advance, but I really see a tie to the level of competition between women and organization and the culture of the company on itself. And so when the leadership or the culture overall of a company sets the tone that everyone has to fight for attention, and everyone is kind of out for themselves, and you can't show up without your ego attached to you, it breeds that competition not only among women, but among all employees of the organization. and it's not productive. I would say, like, bottom line, when there's competition, it's not productive because everyone is trying to achieve their own goal versus work towards a common goal. And I think a lot of the things that we've already talked about today, organizations should try to adopt and encourage, because the less ego-led interactions, the less time that women have to spend proving ourselves just because we're women, or minorities have to prove themselves just because they're a minority, the more we can actually get to work and drive business results, which is why we're all there. We're not there to let our egos lead the way. We're there to drive business results.
Yeah. Lynn, how about you? How have you seen gatekeeping or competition affect women in the workplace?
It's actually extremely toxic, right? And I think it's not only toxic, but it's a special kind of betrayal, because I think that not that everyone expects support, I think, from other women or like people. And I agree with Katie. I think a lot of it has to do with the culture of the company that you're in, but it's extremely divisive and toxic. Plus, when you think about it, two people are really wounded in the process, because that energy isn't really, you're not driving creativity, you're not driving to solutions. There's a tremendous amount of wasted energy, and frankly, brain cells, working in counter purposes. And I think it's a reality. It happens. And I think that all of us have seen this in the workplace. Again, I think the part of this that you really have to keep in mind is that, it depends on where you are in your career. There's choices to be made about what battles you're going to fight. As a manager, the types of boundaries and frankly, rules that you'll put in place, things that you will tolerate and not tolerate, and how you will reward and punish accordingly. I do think that it's a very bad thing, and I think that regardless, it's something that has to be addressed, but it really depends on where you are, because how you act and react depends on your career path and also where you happen to be.
Christine, jumping to you, how have you seen competition negatively impact women?
Yeah, so Lynn brought up a really great point in that it really depends on where you are in your career. And as you were mentioning, and I think we've mentioned in this panel already, that so many women drop out mid-career, which is just, it's not, I mean, that's not anything anyone ever talks about. We talk about, women, getting as many women in the workforce as possible, but we don't talk about keeping them there. And I think the responsibility really lies on the company to put out those policies that allow women to feel comfortable leaving their job if they have to take care of families, or putting their career on pause to have children, to then come back safely knowing that they have a career in place. And I think that the competition really lies in not knowing if that job is secure and safe, ready for you to come back. The competition lies already in the amount of pay equity that is, or the disparate pay that we're facing between our male counterparts already. So I think it just naturally spurs, competition. And especially, as we were saying, in mid-level, in the entry level and beginning stages, as I said, the optics and the marketing is really great with tech, because they're saying, the doors are open, women come in, with diverse populations come in. And so they do, but there's, once you're in, there's some really tight competition. And I try really hard to, again, kind of going back to that first question, just making sure that I have those open conversations and that open dialogue with the other women on my team and in my company, just to kind of see where they are and kind of make sure that everything's above board. There's no kind of betrayal, as Lynn said, that was a great word, betrayal between us in our career kind of growth and what we're looking to achieve within the company. So I've seen it, and I'm really just, it's unfortunate, and I'm hoping that we can kind of start having more conversations around not just getting women in the door, but actually keeping them there.
Yeah, Vanessa, do you want to take us home here?
Sure. Yeah. I think I have a slightly different angle to answer this question, which is, first of all, in my career, some of my worst bosses have been women, unfortunately. And they weren't supportive. They maybe are threatened by me. I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what it was, but and I think with the younger generation, that's changing. I'm hoping it's changing. I mean, I've had in earlier in my career work situations where women would flirt with men to get like kind of that advantage, or they would act dumb so that the men weren't threatened by them. It's just crazy, but that happened. And I think that women, we need to stop being judgmental of other women. And we all have heard it. Oh, look what she's wearing. Look at her, like her hair. How come she, like it's kind of this petty commentary about women at work. Well, how often do you hear women say, oh, look what he's wearing. Look what, like that shirt is so, like you don't hear that as much. The judgments on appearance are something that I think we as women need to stop doing to each other. And it isn't okay if somebody isn't the most stylish. It doesn't mean that they're not qualified for their job, or they shouldn't get that opportunity for that exciting project. But I think there's just like, I've just seen it too much in my career, and that is wearing on an individual who is feeling like, I need to not only do my job well, I gotta look flawless. I can't do the wrong thing, and I don't want people to judge me. And that's exhausting. So at some point in your career, and if those of you are more advanced in your career, you kind of stop caring what other people say. You are like, okay, I'm going to wear this because I want to wear this, and I want to have my hair like this because I want to have my hair like this, and I really don't care what everybody else says. And so, but it's hard when you're earlier in your career to do that, to stand alone like that and not have that support. So, little different thoughts on the topic.
I love different thoughts. And we're going to jump into our next question. According to a study done by New Strategies, 1 in 3 women reported gender bias at work. And so here's another thing that, competition is hard for women, but gender bias is definitely something that shows up for them too. So ladies, how have you overcome gender bias or adversity in your career? Lynn, I'd love to start with you.
Well, one thing is that it's sad to say, but my expectations, I think, have been low in terms of what others might do or not do. I think the biggest thing early in my career, making a very large transition to something so different, required a lot of investment in myself. But I also needed advisors, if you will. It's almost like an advisory board, right? Of people who wouldn't feel that they had to make me happy. So I know one of my mentors said, look, you have no experience. It's going to take you 5 years before you're going to actually get a role and pay that is commensurate with what I know you can do today. Because you can't expect companies to just suddenly, oh, well, she almost had a PhD in something totally different. And well, okay, you're smart, but you don't have any understanding of how business works, how technology works, and so on. And even though a lot of things I taught myself helped me, right? But also, I found that I had to establish credibility among in a technology field among a lot of males where it was intimidating early on, very intimidating. But the dirty little secret is that, I think everybody, regardless of your gender or your background, we all think about, well, do I really know this well? Am I good enough? That's a human condition. And I think that, recognizing that we're all part of the human race, not only the rat race, and really it's the human race at the end that counts. I think that helped to relieve things as well for me. So, and then as I got into more advanced jobs, so when I wasn't just literally cracking into the industry, I had to pick my bosses very carefully. I got burned early on, frankly, by not thinking more strategically, what will it be like to be a direct report to this person? And I actually gravitated to large companies because I realized I could have multiple careers and I had a lot more freedom of movement. Getting in the door was one thing, but then having that freedom of movement allowed me to have more power over what organization I belonged to, what cultures I resonated with, who would be supportive, who would not be supportive. And, as the adage goes, you should fail fast. I think that's true. I've taken some roles and left very quickly because I knew that it would be counterproductive, and, life is short. And so that helped me, if you will, to break through some barriers.
Christine, really interested in hearing what you have to say about this.
Lynn, I always have to go after Lynn, and she's so prolific. I can't. I think overcoming gender bias. So I could just give my own personal example. I come from a writing background, a storytelling background. So, with those skills, you kind of get pigeonholed a bit into marketing because that is the easiest transferable skill from playwriting, which is understandable. You're not going to expect a playwright to go in and start writing code. But that being said, I'd like to challenge people's expectations of what a marketer can do. So I really try to, as everyone said on this panel, like kind of break barriers and kind of figure out ways to learn outside of what I'm doing. I love learning about, things that I am not skilled in, like math and science, analytics. I like picking up, I'm picking up coding right now, learning JavaScript. I was teaching myself Python a little while ago. So like, I like to kind of get my hands dirty in the industry at large, because if I'm not going to become an engineer, at least I could speak the engineering language. And that kind of gives me a little bit of like street credibility, I suppose, or company credibility to then be able to move up. So it is unfortunate. It's kind of a bit of like a prove yourself sort of situation. But I've noticed, at least in the company I'm working in now and in past companies, if I am earnest and like straightforward about my interest in learning something new, find the people who are supportive in that, and find the people who say, yeah, I think you could do it. Even though you're a playwright with marketing, with a marketing background, I'd love to see what kind of apps you can build, or I'd love to see your analytics or what your business strategy is for this quarter, So I think putting yourself in those situations where you can kind of stretch your own understanding and kind of stretch your own muscles, but then also provide something for the people who don't believe you can do something to kind of show them a little bit what you can actually accomplish. So that's how I try to overcome bias.
Thanks, Christine. Vanessa, I know you've got more than 30 years in the industry. What does it look like from your perspective?
So I'll try and kind of, be my analytical self and say that, number one is be excellent at whatever you do. Be excellent. You're going to know your knowledge, your understanding, your approach is different than other people in the room, and you bring something unique. So whatever that is, just be excellent. And the second thing is, do not internalize the bias. It exists, but it isn't you. It's outside of you. And you have to in some ways accept it, in the sense that you're not going to by yourself be able to change it. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean you won't do things in your life to try and make things different for future generations, but don't internalize it. And adversity is, in terms of adversity, it's just like, I don't know, it's resilience. It's like you're going to get knocked down, pick yourself back up and just keep going. Yeah. And I do draw on my ancestors for some of the adversity they have overcome for me to be where I am here today. So I think that, all of those things, are important. And, that's what's gotten me through it all.
Thanks for sharing, Vanessa. It sounds like everybody's been through adversity in their careers, but let's talk a little bit about how we lift each other up. So according to Skillsoft's Women in Tech report, 43% of women surveyed said that coaching or mentoring will encourage others to join or advance within the tech industry. So what is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and when has mentorship played a key role in your career progression? Lynn, can we start with you?
Yeah, first of all, there's a very big difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I think that at this point, I didn't realize this early on in my career, but just as large corporations and even private companies have boards of directors, you need a board. You need people that understand you, that get you. You have to have some bench strength there, and diversity as well. So your board, if you will help you. And sometimes you have people inside your company, you have independent directors, you have insiders, right? So I would think about that very much the way corporations think about their boards. And there's lots of different aspects that they govern. I think in a career, your board is there like mentors to help you, right? That's for advice. It is consolation sometimes, all kinds of things. A sponsor, though, is someone that has the juice to help you. And sometimes you have to ask for that, right? So a couple of examples, one is when you know something's not right. I was actually it was a review time. I was a manager, but I had to fight, right, in order to get a pay raise for someone who reported to me. And I knew that there was a gap. And actually it involved yelling. But what was wonderful about it, it was almost cathartic, because both of us felt at the end of that we'd come to the right place, because it's not an infinite amount of money or pool for for pay raises and bonuses. But a sponsor is someone that's willing to have that raised voiced conversation. Or a sponsor is someone that says, hey, wait a minute. You know what? For the last 4 people that got into this high potential program and this high hope program were all men, and nobody was diverse. They have to have the courage to say that. That's a sponsor. That's not just about advice, and not that I'm underplaying that at all. I think it's very important, but it is an extremely proactive, and also, again, it's strategic. It's someone that understands the organization, recognizes opportunities, and is able to take action, and frankly has the influence. And so I think that you need both. You need mentors, but you have to find, and it may take a while before you figure out who the sponsor is in your life or in your particular company.
Thanks, Lynn. And I just have to snaps for yelling, because anybody who has you as a sponsor is lucky to have you. I just want to say. Christine, let's jump to you.
So yes, I fully agree. I think having a mentor, I advocate to have multiple mentors. I think mentors are great for all facets of your life, not just your career. So I and I participate in CrossFit. So I feel like my coaches are my mentors in sport. I have some mentors in my company. I have friends who I feel like I can turn to for mentorship. So I think mentors really kind of round out who you are as a person, and you can use as sounding boards and kind of growth opportunities. Sponsors definitely encourage you to, or advocate for you and encourage you to grow within a particular field or particular situation. So I've been lucky enough to have advocates and sponsors in my career. I hope to be able to become a sponsor for others in my industry. And I'm always looking to help and mentor as well. So I'm always open. I feel like I kind of use my career. I used to kind of think of it negatively as like a limiting factor. I don't have that kind of straight line career trajectory like some others do. But I think with kind of diverse experience, you can really lend yourself to become a mentor or sponsor for somebody in your company, regardless of tech. I think any industry would require that to make people feel recognized and to help them grow.
Definitely. Vanessa, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the definitions people have given thus far. I think the other one I would just say answer to sponsor or add to sponsor is that someone who is of influence is incredibly helpful. Like they don't necessarily need to be the top executive, but they need to be a good influencer and someone other people will listen to and respect. So it's important. I would also say that in my experience, women and underrepresented people have not, there isn't a lot of sponsors for them in the workplace. And that's part of the challenge of moving up in an organization and progressing in your career. And so until there are more, and it's kind of a chicken the egg problem, because until you get more diverse people in higher places, you won't have, you know, the pool of sponsors, or you need white men to start stepping up and become real sponsors for these up and coming women and diverse people. So I think that is a change that's going to have to happen, or we're going to continue to be in this position where we don't see women and more diverse people moving up the organization ranks. So that's I didn't have a ton in my career. But there were a few, and I maximized that to the extent I could. And I even called one of my, I call him, he was my first boss out of college. And he was such an advocate for me. He was a white male in his like late 40s at the time. And I called him like 5 years ago. He's passed since then, but I thanked him for everything he did for me early in my career. And you know, it's just he at the time didn't realize how much I did realize and appreciate what he did. But after him, there wasn't it was pretty scarce in terms of that kind of sponsorship. So.
Katie, round us out here. What sponsorship have you had?
Well, I was going to agree with everything that everyone said, and bottom line it that I think a mentor, if I had to think of an analogy, a mentor is kind of like a arranged marriage, and a sponsor is like having a 10-year recommitment ceremony, right? Like if you think about it from a relationship standpoint, if you are looking to increase your skills in project management, you might get paired with a stellar project manager. And if you as an employee take the accountability to nurture that relationship and really show your mentor like that you are serious and that you value their time and that you are making impact to the business because of the mentorship, you're going to start working in the weeds with that mentor, and they're going to turn into a sponsor for you naturally. And the only other thing I'll add is that I think it's really important when you get to a point in your career where you can be a sponsor to take the time to do it, because we've all been there. We've all had sponsors that have pushed us up, and when you get to that point in the organization, sometimes it's difficult to prioritize that over the 10 other people asking you for deliverables. And so I definitely encourage everyone who's in a position to be a sponsor to take that on, because it's very valuable, and you get more out of it than you give, honestly.
Thanks for wrapping us up there, Katie. And thank you everybody for your incredible participation tonight and sharing your stories and knowledge with us. I want to transfer now to some Q&A questions that we've had come in. And I think we're going to do this a little bit different. If everybody wants to like come off mute and, you know, I'll ask the question, and like, as you've got something, just throw it out here. So the first question coming in from the audience tonight, can you share more about times when you've redirected or reclaimed power in situations where male coworkers mansplain or take your ideas and claim them as their own in a group setting?
I would say I'm a very direct person, full of, you know, usually in situations where there's a lot of other technical men in the room, you know, I just be pretty direct and say, you know, I think that's what I just said. And I would wait till, you know, it got quiet enough to say that, so that there was space for people to hear it. Usually it got very quiet after I said that. So, and then we moved on. So, but I've also been in situations where other women were talked over, and I would stop, and this is later in my career, I would stop and say, did we hear what she just said? And, you know, being a more senior member in the room, you know, I was able to, like, I had that level of, you know, influence or power to stop the conversation. And I think you've got to do that as you move up in the organization.
I think that it takes, at least for me, it has taken a tremendous amount of emotional energy to have the courage to do, I think, you know, Vanessa, what you're talking about. I remember a situation where I was in a meeting and I looked around the table and I realized that I had more experience in industry than all the men. And, you know, I think all of us have been used to being the only woman in the meeting or in the room. But I gave voice to that, and I was scared. To be honest with you, I was really scared. And even after saying it, you know, that moment of silence, I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I just say? But and it feels funny to establish dominance, but I think it is. I think there are times when you have to have a situational awareness where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you guys what needs to be heard at this point. But also, Christine, to go back to what you said in the first round of questions, you know, that idea of amplifying too, and Vanessa, you just brought it up here too, is so powerful. And this is the way women, instead of working counter purposes to one another, can really be great allies and amplify, and again, call out, I think, you know, the elephant in the room.
I think that's so important. I was about to say, I have no idea how to do it, because every time I get talked over or, you know, somebody takes my idea, my blood boils and I just kind of lose it internally. So I'm really happy to hear from you both on how you kind of give yourself permission. And it really, frankly, it should be that you let them know that that was your idea. It's not petty. And it's not selfish, it's honest. And I think you need to be able to assert dominance. So I appreciate that.
I take a slightly different approach. You know, if it gets crazy in the room, I'll definitely stand up for myself, but I firmly believe that my results speak for themselves. And so I let the person, whether it's a male or female, I've been in both situations, dig their own grave. And I think in time, the results will speak for themselves. So I really try to take the high road as much as possible and put my head down and focus on what I'm supposed to be doing. And if the situation calls for it, clearly we need to stand up for ourselves, even though we're scared in our heads. But I do trust that if I take the high road and put my head down and work, I will get the results that I need.
Awesome. Some different perspectives on handling that. I love it. Okay, next question. Do you feel that the COVID pandemic has made these challenges for women worse or better?
That's a great
Worse.
question.
I can start. I'm a woman of twin 6-year-olds. And I liken the pandemic to having to work from home and take on all of the responsibilities of being at home as well as being a successful businesswoman. And so I think the pressure that the pandemic has put on women in the workplace has just multiplied. And I encourage everyone listening to do what you need to do to be successful in your life, whether that's in your personal life or work life. So I recently realized I cannot be downstairs when my kids are getting ready for school and be successful at the same time. I need to change where I am and take control of that versus just letting it happen. And so I definitely recommend that everyone kind of think through the challenges that you're facing because of the pandemic and how you can change it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm reflecting it was last year, or when was it? It was in the first year of the pandemic, actually. I was mentoring someone who was trying to get to that next level. And to make a leap in her career. And one of the challenges, of course, was the lack of in-person. And so I think it took more effort for her. And what ended up happening is, we happen to know that a job she applied for, that there was the position above that was also empty. And so I encouraged her to apply for the higher position rather than to make a lateral move. But I have to say that I feel that it took more time and energy to do that, and more communication to make that happen because of the limiting factor of not being able to sit down and have a face-to-face one-on-one with a hiring manager.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I might take a slightly different stance in that I don't have children. I don't have too many responsibilities at home as of now, but I think it potentially, and I could be wrong, but potentially having kind of everyone with the same tech and the same kind of square space within the room kind of almost levels the playing field in a way. Potential presence in a room could stifle other people's communication. If you're in a room with a group of men, you might feel that kind of tension, whereas maybe behind a screen or seeing little boxes might allow you to be more vocal and more present. So there's no data I'm speaking to, or there's no kind of facts to back this up, but I'm just thinking maybe having everybody within the company have the same kind of tech kind of levels the playing field in communication. Of course, that's going to drastically change, I think, in a hybrid environment, because whoever is getting that FaceTime will inevitably get that more experience, more opportunity than the person behind the screen at home. But I think maybe the pandemic could have potentially kind of leveled the playing field a bit in communication, at least in meetings and with managers.
All right, this is our last question for tonight, everybody. So Lisa is interested to know what everyone does for personal growth that is not work related.
So I'm happy to start that one off. Years ago, I met another woman who had this practice of doing something that wasn't work related, that was outside of her comfort zone. And so I started that as well. So at the beginning of the year, I would think about, well, what's the thing I'm going to do this year that's different? And that's led me to lots of really interesting things. And, you know, there's a part in my life where I wanted to get more physically fit. So I ended up running a marathon, riding a 200-mile bike ride. It's led to sailing. I'm not a on the water person, scuba diving, things like that. But it's also helped me to, I guess, get more diversified in terms of my own interests and give me an excuse to get out. And that has been that's been helpful to me. It's been beneficial because I've had to learn new skills and feel uncomfortable, but it's also helped me to, I guess, play better, you know.
I found a really good therapist. And the things I've learned about myself have really been helpful in my work life too. So it's definitely crossed over. I also proactively find networks of women and really smart women. And I moved myself to Seattle to be amongst really smart women. And I meet with them regularly to just talk about life. And that's been super helpful.
I kind of similar to Lynn. I think there is a connection for me between like physical and personal growth. So I'm super active in hiking during the winter, snowshoeing. I talk about mental challenges, but golf is very challenging. And yeah, I've actually learned a lot through golf. And I don't do it because men do it. I actually really enjoy it. And I think the other thing, yoga, is really important, and it helps. I think, especially I was in cybersecurity for 19 years, so you have to be very calm and you have to be present because there's like so much, you know, stuff going on, and especially when an incident's occurring. And then I don't know about personal growth, but I love wine tasting, so it's fun, and you need to sometimes. I call it I love watching sometimes Tyler Perry movies, and I just decompress because I don't want to think about anything related to work, and just kind of, it's my escape, and like just sit down and have wine. So yeah, there you go.
I enjoy listening to podcasts whenever I can. So I love that they're just available when I'm doing laundry or walking my dog. I could just listen to something. Audiobooks are also really great, and they don't have to be business related. I do listen to a lot of business related podcasts and audiobooks, but I just love a good kind of summer novel, just kind of something fun to listen to while I'm doing household activities. So it keeps me sane, I think, not having to think about work all the time.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Can we like snaps, claps? Everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody jumping on tonight, and thank you to all of our attendees. Very exciting. Frances, I'm going to have you come on. Any last words for us tonight?
No, I just want to reiterate a thank you. I know that you're all busy and you're probably asked to do all sorts of things. And so thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us and our membership. And a reminder to everyone to stay tuned for our May events, which will be in person for the first time since 2019. So we're very excited to meet everyone face to face again. And another huge thank you is someone who works in tech. I heard a lot of things that resonated with me, and I learned a lot of new things as well. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for attending, and everyone have a lovely evening. If you're in Seattle, the sun is out. So hopefully we can have a relaxing evening and get some sunshine.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.